people, welcome back for another video, another movie review. Today we are going to be reviewing Blue Beetle, starring Xolo Maridueña. But before we go ahead and get started with the review, I wanted to go ahead and remind you guys that the world is full of a lot of negativity. I hope you're doing your part in spreading the positivity. Stop the hate, spread the love. Now on to the movie review. Blue Beetle is Xolo Maridueña, and again if I'm butchering that last name, but I am not very good at pronouncing that. But it is his first big role since Cobra Kai. We all know Cobra Kai was a huge success on Netflix, but come on now, to play a superhero for James Gunn's new DCU and everything, this is his first big role. And how did he do? I think he was a perfect casting. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this from a critical point of view before shifting to a fan's perspective. Right off the bat, as a critic, I think, what comes to my head is that this is such a generic movie. This is what we've seen for the past 20 years already, whether it's from Spider-Man, from Venom, and Iron Man, and all of those combined together, this is the movie you would kind of get. So right off the bat, it's nothing new. So you're not going into this movie thinking, man, this is going to go ahead and, provide that shock value that those movies did the first time we watched them. But that's not to say that it's not enjoyable, right? And as a critic, I want to go ahead and celebrate this from a critic point of view and a fan's perspective, because this is something to celebrate about. For sure, this is probably the second or third movie in the past 3-4 years, especially probably the only DCU movie, or not even just DCU movie, DC movie that stuck the landing from the third act. So I wanted to give it a round of applause because the third act did not disappoint like so many other movies do so. So I didn't want to go ahead and put that out there first, because sometimes you could watch a movie as great as it is, and then the third act just kills it, right? We've seen that with Wonder Woman, in my opinion, that whole battle with Ares, and we've seen many other movies with a similar thing. So CGI is another great thing that I think this movie surprisingly did better than The Flash and almost every other superhero movie without Guardians of the Galaxy from the past 2-3 years. I think the CGI for this movie was great, especially with the budget they were working for, which I believe is why they weren't expecting such a big weekend for this. Obviously, there's other things that are going into this, such as James Gunn, saying that this is going to be rebooted and everything. Although I'm not sure if the movie itself will be rebooted. Let's go ahead and we'll leave that for another video. But CGI, fantastic. Music, it's going to be really up to you. I personally love the whole synth wave music. It's what has made me love Stranger Things on Netflix. So I was thoroughly enjoying every track and everything that they were playing throughout this movie. Obviously, there is some change to where you were like, all right, they probably made a track change here and there, because you would have synth wave and then out of nowhere there's some scenes where you'll have a rock and roll. So I'm like, okay, but it wasn't anything that would annoy you or anything like that. It's just something that caught my attention, right? Because I'm trying to see how everything in this movie is being put together. And then you want to talk about the pacing. I thought the pacing for this movie, I know some people have been complaining about the pacing, how it would kind of start off too slow, and then once he becomes Blue Beetle, then you end up enjoying the rest of the movie. I happen to be in the opposite spectrum of that. As a critic, I can go ahead and appreciate them actually giving you a little dynamic of who this family is, who this character is, how everyone works together, how everyone cares for each other, because I think that leads to the big moments that the movie does have later down the road with those family interactions, right? If this movie started off with just him becoming Blue Beetle from the very first scene, and then they showed little glimpses of the family, I don't think it would have worked as well. I think this works great. Shows you, the troubles that they're facing when Jaime comes back from finishing college, being the first of his family to do so, all the things his family had, all the struggles his family had been hiding from him. And I think they landed that pretty well. So I do think all three acts are pretty well paced, along with transitioning. Some movies have a hard time transitioning to the next act because they need this big bad to do something or anything like that. I don't think this movie suffered from any type of issue with pacing at all. Sound design, again, music was great. The hits they had, every time someone punched or anything, you could hear the sound very good. So sound design was great, music was great. Video, Video was obviously great in terms of showing off, the CGI, showing off his powers, everything was great. The fights weren't necessarily like all that, I would have to say, because it was just mech armor fighting mech armor. So we've seen that in Iron Man, and even in Iron Man, right? They weren't necessarily the best fights of the MCU, but they were still enjoyable, and that's the case with this movie. The cast and crew, I think everyone in this movie nailed their part. George Lopez brought so much comedy to this as a comedic genius and someone who has had so much experience being a comic. He brought the comic relief at the right moment, and I think that's a big thing because a lot of movies they try to be funny, but they don't know how to stick their jokes and everything. And although not every joke worked in this movie, I would say that George Lopez definitely did. His family's dynamics definitely did. There's some subtle humor in there that I'm pretty sure they didn't expect to crack jokes the way it came out. Like I had a whole theater that I was watching the movie with. Everyone was laughing throughout the entire movie, so it was great to see everyone do so. It's been a while since everyone's been able to really sit together again, barring Guardians of the Galaxy 3, because I think that was so close to this movie. Right, I don't consider 2 months to be that big of a difference. But barring that movie, I think it's been a very long time since I've had a whole group of theater folk to be really laughing like this together. And even in Guardians 3, now that I think about it, I think a lot more people were crying in that movie than laughing. So this was definitely a good time hanging out with the crowd. So, fans' point of view, we'll go ahead and go into this, but as a critic, I am going to go ahead and give this a simple 7.5 out of 10. And again, I think the only thing that's keeping this movie behind, even though I gave so many good things about it, is the fact that it is such a generic movie. There is nothing new about it. We've seen this in many different movies before. Many different movies have probably done it better, but that's not to say that this movie was not enjoyable. So 7.5 sounds like a fair assessment as a critic. Now let's go ahead and go on look at this through a fan's perspective. Someone who loves comics, someone who loves Blue Beetle and Injustice 2 in video games. And in fact, I didn't have too much knowledge about Blue Beetle until I actually started a little bit more, until I started seeing him in the video games, right? Injustice 2 was probably my biggest experience to the character. And boy, will I tell you that some of the scenes they have in the movie, it feels like, and I know that it's confirmed that they went ahead and adapted some of the powers from the game itself, but I did not expect them to really go all the way out and have some scenes that look like they're from the video game, which I thought were really fun. And I'm not saying like the CGI way, I'm talking about the way they had the frame, the way he used that power. So that was such a great callback. I really enjoyed that. Some of the references they made to Batman, Superman, and all that stuff, although they weren't too big, they fit it really well. So I really enjoyed that. It lets you know that, hey, this is taking place in a world that is full of superheroes. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And as a fan, like when you've seen Shazam, I think a lot of people loved Shazam because of the whole family dynamic. And I think, being a fan of that type of storytelling, I think this movie did it much better because it was more consistent throughout it. The jokes were better, the action was better. Just about everything about it was much better than what Shazam was. And Shazam was great in itself. But this movie, I think as a fan, it's a great movie. Let's go ahead and talk about Xolo Maridueña because I think he did a fantastic job. Did I envision him being Blue Beetle? Not really, but seeing this movie as a fan, I am now a bigger fan of his than some of the other actors playing theirs. I mean, I cannot imagine someone else taking this role from him. So, as a fan, I thoroughly really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the references they made, some of the way they went ahead and framed the powers and the way it was just a hilarious movie throughout. And as I mentioned, my whole theater was pretty much laughing throughout so many different scenes. I really enjoyed the action. I really enjoyed the music. I really enjoyed the character. I want this character to continue to keep going. And if James Gunn is going to go ahead and, whether they reboot, say this movie didn't exist, but they keep the actors for the roles they played in this movie, I'd be totally fine with that. If he decides to keep it, because he really can. This movie was a good enough standalone movie where it didn't feel like it was part of the DCEU or part of the DCU. They just made references to Superman and Batman, which we know already exist in DCU, so I think it could actually move forward. So as a fan, I think I would go ahead and give this an 8.5. And the reason I'm giving it such a high score, and I wouldn't give it a 9, and I didn't want to give it an 8, and only for the fact that this movie, again, even if you're a fan of all this stuff, it's nothing new, but it's still highly entertaining. So I'll give it an 8.5, and if you combine the score, the 7.5 critical score, the 8.5 fan perspective score, you combine that, I'll give it an overall score of 8 out of 10. I recommend you guys to go see it. It didn't make a big splash. I think it only made $25 million at the box office. And I understand some people may just be like, we'll see how people like this movie. And if you guys trust my opinion, then I would tell you guys to go ahead and go watch it. Go watch it with your friends, with your family, because I think this is one of those movies, if you watch it as a group, you will have a much better time because of all the comedic action, the comedic scenes in it. I think it's just better when you laugh as a group, right? Not that there's anything wrong with you laughing by yourself or going by yourself. That's completely fine too. Me personally, I think it's just a better experience when you're surrounded by people who share the same emotion as you. It just makes it that much better, right? The experience that much better. That's why we love theater over just streaming at home. But hey, maybe you will enjoy that more by yourself, however you want it. If you've already seen the movie, whatever you think about it, leave it in the comments section down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that post notification bell. And guys, before I let you guys go, just wanted to give you guys a big thank you, because I have finally reached 100 subscribers. The goal obviously is to always go higher. I reached the 100 milestone. Next milestone will be 500, then 1,000, then 2,000. You know, keep on going from there. 1,000,000, man. Whatever you guys want to carry me to, I'm here to provide my services. I'm here to entertain you guys. We'll do some more reaction videos. We'll do some more reviews. I hope you guys get along and join me on my ride. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great one.